The stable's horse had never been tamed, until a boy with disabilities arrived and changed everything. Melissa Johnson clenched her fists as she watched the owner of Green Valley Stables yell at his team of trainers. The dark brown horse with orange patches on its legs had just thrown another experienced professional, and the losses had already exceeded $100,000. It was in this tense moment that her 6-year-old son, Ethan, slipped away from her watch in the kitchen. The boy walked determinedly toward the fence where the most feared animal on the entire property stood. "Ethan, no!" shouted Melissa, running after her son. But something impossible happened. The horse, which had been foaming with anger just seconds before, lowered its head gently when it saw the child. Ethan reached out his small hand and touched the animal's muzzle, as if they were old friends. "How is this possible?" murmured Richard Thompson, the stable's owner, watching the scene in disbelief. Melissa reached the fence breathless, her heart racing. Her son had Down syndrome and sometimes didn't understand the dangers around him, but there he was, smiling calmly as he stroked the muzzle of the horse that had cost a fortune and proved useless for any activity. "Get that child out of there immediately," ordered Richard, recovering from the shock. "If anything happens, I'll be sued." "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson. It won't happen again," said Melissa, pulling Ethan by the hand. The boy protested with quiet grunts, his eyes fixed on the horse, which watched him with a calmness never seen before. "Mum, he's sad," said Ethan, pointing at the animal. "Come on, sweetheart. You can't stay here." Richard Thompson was 62 and had turned the stables into one of the most profitable properties in the Sacramento area. He was a tough man, shaped by years of difficult business and personal losses he'd rather forget. That horse represented his greatest failure in decades of breeding. "Melissa," he called as she walked away with her son, "I want you to keep the boy away from the animals, far away. That's an order." "Yes, sir." Melissa Johnson had arrived at the stables just 3 weeks earlier, carrying the recent pain of losing her husband and the desperate need for a job. Michael had passed after a long battle with an illness that drained the family's savings. Working in the stable's kitchen was all she had to start over with Ethan. That night, after everyone had left, Ethan slipped out again. Melissa found him 2 hours later, asleep against the pasture fence with the horse lying on the other side, close enough to touch. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" "He was alone, Mom. Like me when Dad left." Her son's words pierced Melissa's heart. How could she explain to a special child that some things were forbidden, even when we didn't understand why? Dr. Robert Wilson, the stable's veterinarian for 15 years, had observed everything from a distance. He was a meticulous man, a graduate of the University of California, and had never seen such strange behavior in all his years of practice. "Melissa, can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course, doctor." "That horse arrived here 8 months ago. No one can even brush him. But with your son..." "I know it seems strange, doctor, but Ethan's always had this connection with animals. When he was a baby, our stray dog was the only one who could calm him during his episodes. Would you happen to know where this horse came from?" Melissa hesitated. There was something about the question that made her uneasy. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I need to understand what happened to him. This isn't normal behavior. There are untreated traumas here." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The next day, Richard called Melissa into his office. The atmosphere was tense, with equestrian competition trophies decorating the walls and photos of champion horses that had passed through the property. "Melissa, I need to be clear with you. If your son goes near that horse again, I'll have to let you go." "But Mr. Thompson, he didn't do anything wrong. I don't care, I can't take risks. I've already had lawyers here because of that animal. An accident with a special needs child would ruin the stables." "I understand, sir. And one more thing. I want you to install a lock on your bedroom door. That boy can't keep sneaking out at night." Melissa left the office with tears in her eyes. Every job she got came with humiliation. People looked at Ethan and only saw limitations, problems, responsibilities they didn't want to take on. Amanda Thompson, Richard's daughter, and the stable's financial manager, had watched the whole conversation through the slightly open door. At 45, she was a bitter woman, divorced for 10 years and childless. She had always been the perfect daughter her father wanted, cold, calculating, and focused solely on results. "Dad, you were too hard on her." "Amanda, you don't understand. If something happens, I know, lawsuits, settlements, bad publicity, always the same story. It's not just that. Then what is it?" Richard looked away, as he always did when he didn't want to answer. "Nothing, forget it." But Amanda didn't forget. Something about her father's behavior puzzled her. She decided to investigate the horse's background on her own. Frank Miller was the head trainer at the stables. A 58-year-old Canadian, he had dedicated his entire life to working with horses. His reputation was solid, built over decades of taming the most difficult animals. That's why his failure with that chestnut horse was destroying his professional pride. "Robert, I need to understand what's wrong with me," he said to the vet over lunch. 35 years doing this, and I've never been in a situation like this." "Frank, it's not you. It's the horse. He has deep trauma." "Trauma? Then how do you explain what happened with that boy?" "I can't explain it, but I have a theory." "What?" "Special needs children sometimes connect with wounded animals in a way we adults can't. They don't have prejudices or expectations. They just offer pure love." Frank scoffed, unconvinced. "Pure love doesn't tame a horse, Robert. Technique does. Experience does. What happened there was luck." "Do you really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise my whole career makes no sense." That week, tension at the stables grew when Melissa found Ethan talking to himself in the empty pasture. The boy spoke softly, as if the horse were there. "Who are you talking to, sweetheart?" "Thunder." "Thunder? That's his name. He told me." Melissa felt a chill. Ethan had never shown behavior like this before. "Ethan, the horse isn't here." "Yes, he is. He's always here," the boy said, touching his chest. Amanda, who had decided to look into the horse's history, found something disturbing in the stable's records. The animal had been bought from a man in desperate financial straits who needed money for his son's medical treatments. The seller's name was Michael Johnson. "It can't be," she murmured, comparing the documents to Melissa's employment file. The connection was obvious. Michael Johnson was Melissa's late husband. The horse had belonged to their family. Amanda froze at the discovery. Had her father known this when he hired Melissa? Was it a coincidence, or was there something more behind it? She decided to confront Richard that very night. "Dad, I need to talk to you." "It's late, Amanda. We'll talk tomorrow. It's about the horse and about Melissa." Richard stopped walking toward the bedroom. "What about them? Did you know the horse belonged to her husband?" The silence that followed was more telling than any answer. "You knew," Amanda concluded. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't important." "How wasn't it important? Her son is bonding with an animal that belonged to his father. That explains everything." "It explains nothing, and you'll keep quiet about this." "Why?" "Because if she finds out, she'll want the horse back, and I paid a lot for him." Amanda was shocked by her father's coldness. "Dad, how much did you pay?" $50,000. "And how much was he worth at the time?" "That's irrelevant." "How much, Dad?" $120,000. Amanda felt her stomach twist. Her father had taken advantage of a sick man's desperation to buy the horse for less than half its value. And now he had hired the widow, probably to keep her from discovering the truth and questioning the sale. "That's disgusting, Dad. That's business, Amanda. The man needed money, I needed the horse. It was a fair transaction." "Fair? You stole from a family in despair." "Watch your tone with me, young lady." But Amanda was no longer the obedient girl she had always been. Something had changed in her after seeing the connection between Ethan and the horse. Maybe it was the purity of that love, so different from the calculating world she lived in. The next morning, Frank decided to try a new approach with the horse. He'd lost sleep thinking about Robert's words on pure love and special connections. Maybe there was something he could learn from what he'd witnessed. He entered the pen with slow movements, speaking softly as he'd seen Ethan do. The horse watched him warily but didn't attack immediately as usual. "Easy, boy, I won't hurt you." Frank reached out slowly, trying to mimic the boy's gestures. For a moment, it seemed to work. The horse took a few steps closer. Then everything fell apart. A sudden noise spooked the animal, and it bolted toward the trainer. Frank barely managed to throw himself aside at the last second, avoiding being trampled. "Damn animal!" he shouted, frustrated and humiliated once again. Ethan, who had been watching everything hidden behind the kitchen, ran toward the pen. "No, he's not damn, he's scared." "Ethan, come back here," yelled Melissa, who had rushed after her son, but the boy had already climbed the low fence and was walking toward the agitated horse. Frank froze, unsure whether to intercept the child or shout to scare him into stopping. "Ethan, get out of there," he said quietly. The boy completely ignored the trainer. He walked straight up to the horse, which stopped thrashing the moment it saw him. "It's okay, Thunder. The man didn't mean to hurt you." Ethan touched the animal's neck, and it lowered its head, nuzzling the boy's shoulder. "He just doesn't understand you yet. But one day he will." Frank watched the scene with a mix of awe and humiliation. A 6-year-old boy with Down syndrome had achieved in seconds what he hadn't in months. "How does he know the horse's name?" he asked Melissa. "I don't know. Ethan's always been like this with animals." "You never told him the name." "I never knew what it was. When he arrived here, no one told me." Frank felt a tightness in his chest. If even the mother didn't know the horse's name, how could Ethan? Unless... "Melissa, where are you from?" "From the countryside near Los Angeles, a small town close to Bakersfield." "And what did you do there?" "My husband had a small ranch. He raised a few horses to sell." The pieces began falling into place in Frank's mind. He decided to investigate on his own. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That afternoon, Robert noticed something that puzzled him even more. The horse hadn't touched its feed since Ethan had been forbidden to visit. It was as if the animal sank into depression on the days it didn't see the boy. "Richard, I need to talk to you about the horse." "What now, Robert?" "He's refusing to eat, and it only happens when the boy doesn't show up." "What does that have to do with me?" "Everything. This animal is developing an emotional dependence on the child. If we keep separating them, he could develop serious health issues." "Are you suggesting I let a special needs child play with a dangerous horse?" "I'm suggesting maybe this horse isn't as dangerous as we think, at least not with him." "Robert, you've lost your mind. I won't take that risk." "Then sell the horse, because keeping him here like this is cruelty." Richard bristled at the suggestion, but couldn't deny Robert was right. The horse was becoming a growing liability with no sign of improvement. "I've tried selling him. No one wants an aggressive animal." "What if he wasn't aggressive anymore?" "What do you mean?" "What if we let the boy work with him, under full supervision with every possible precaution?" "You've gone completely crazy." "Richard, in 30 years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. This might be our only chance to recover the investment. And if it goes wrong, if the child gets hurt, and if it works, what if we discover this boy has a special gift?" Richard fell silent. The businessman in him began weighing possibilities. A docile horse was worth far more than a useless one, and there was a market for therapy horses, especially with a compelling backstory. "I'll think about it." Meanwhile, Amanda had made a decision that would change everything. She sought out Melissa in the kitchen when she was sure they'd be alone. "Melissa, I need to tell you something important." "What is it, Mrs. Amanda?" "It's about the horse, and about your husband." Melissa stopped washing the dishes, sensing something serious was coming. "My husband? Did you know the horse your son loves so much used to belong to you?" The plate Melissa was holding slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor. "What do you mean?" "Your husband sold that horse to my father 8 months ago, probably to pay for medical treatments." Melissa sank heavily into a chair, trying to process the information. Michael sold Thunder. So, you remember the horse? He was Ethan's favorite. After he was born, we couldn't separate them. Thunder followed the boy around the property like a dog. When Michael got sick, Melissa couldn't finish. Tears began streaming down her face. He never told me he sold him, said Thunder had run off and we couldn't find him. He didn't want you to know, probably to spare you. How much did my father pay for the horse? $50,000. That's all? Michael said Thunder was worth over $100,000. Amanda closed her eyes, confirming her worst suspicions. Melissa, I need to tell you something else. My father knew who you were when he hired you. What do you mean? He knew you were Michael's widow, and he knew Ethan was the son of the horse's former owner. Melissa stood up, feeling betrayed and humiliated. Why did he hire me then? To keep you from finding out the truth and questioning the sale. The revelation hit Melissa like a punch to the gut. Losing her husband and financial stability wasn't enough. She'd also been manipulated by someone who took advantage of her desperation. Mrs. Amanda, thank you for telling me, but I need to leave now. You're not going, at least not yet. How can I not go? I can't stay here knowing this. Melissa, you have rights. That horse could rightfully be yours. I don't understand. If the sale was made for way below market value, taking advantage of someone in need, it could be challenged in court. Melissa shook her head. I don't have money for a lawyer, and I can't prove Michael was being tricked. I can help you. Why? Why would you do this against your own father? Amanda looked out the window, watching Ethan playing alone in the yard. Because I'm tired of living in a world where only money matters, and because that boy taught me there are things more valuable than profit. That night, Richard made a decision that surprised everyone. He called Melissa into his office and made an unexpected offer. Melissa, I spoke with Dr. Robert. He thinks your son could help with the horse, sir. I want Ethan to work with the animal. 1 hour a day, always supervised. If we manage to tame the horse, you'll get a $10,000 commission. Melissa was suspicious. The sudden change in attitude was too questionable. Why the change of heart? Because I need to recover my investment in this animal, and if your son is the only chance, I'll try it. What if Ethan gets hurt? We'll take every possible precaution. Robert will always be present, and I'll get special insurance. Melissa knew she should refuse. She knew Richard had hidden motives for this offer, but $10,000 meant 6 months' salary, and Ethan was clearly suffering without the horse. All right, but on one condition. What? I want you to tell me the truth about how you got this horse. Richard tensed. What do you mean? I want to know who sold it to you, and for how much. That's confidential. Then no deal. Richard stayed silent for long seconds, weighing his options. I bought it from a man in a tough spot. He needed the money for medical treatment. How much did you pay? $50,000. And what was the horse worth? At the time, around 80. Melissa knew he was lying, but chose not to confront him then. Fine, I accept the deal. The next day, the supervised sessions began. Robert prepared a strict safety protocol with restraint ropes and protective gear. Ethan was thrilled when he learned he could be near Thunder again. Mom, I knew he missed me. How did you know, sweetheart? Because I missed him too. Frank watched the first session skeptically. He was convinced the horse's calmness around the boy was just luck, and that sooner or later, something would go wrong. But as days passed, he had to admit he was witnessing something extraordinary. Ethan not only calmed the horse, but got him to obey basic commands. Within a week, the animal allowed itself to be brushed and fed in the boy's presence. This is impossible, Frank muttered, watching Ethan teach the horse to lift its hoof. Frank, you need to accept there are things we don't understand, Robert said. But how can a child with limitations achieve what experienced professionals couldn't? Maybe because the limitations are in our heads, not his. Richard watched from a distance, torn between admiration for what he saw and fear of the implications. If word got out, it could draw unwanted attention. Reporters, onlookers, people questioning how a special needs child had tamed a horse no one else could handle. What if someone looked into the animal's origins? Amanda, however, was fascinated. There was something about the purity of Ethan and the horse's bond that moved her deeply. It was like witnessing a miracle unfold every day. "Dad, you need to see this as an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity?" "Imagine the story we could tell. A special boy who can connect with troubled animals. There's a market for this. Equine therapy, educational programs. Amanda, this could attract the wrong kind of attention, or it could attract exactly the attention we need to expand the business." But Richard knew there was more at stake than his daughter realized. If the truth about the horse's purchase came out, his reputation would be ruined. Meanwhile, Ethan continued his work with Thunder, oblivious to the complexities of the adult world around him. To him, there was nothing extraordinary about what he did. He was just a boy playing with his four-legged friend. "Thunder, do you remember our old home?" he asked while brushing the animal. "Daddy built that special fence for you, and you always let me ride, even when I was little." Melissa watched these conversations with a heavy heart. Ethan clearly had memories of their time on the farm, when the family was whole and the future seemed bright. "Sweetheart, do you remember your dad?" "Of course I do. He's right here," Ethan said, touching the horse's neck. "Thunder tells me stories about him." The boy's words were like daggers in Melissa's heart. How do you explain to a child that his father wasn't coming back? How do you make him understand that sometimes we lose the people we love most? Dr. Wilson began documenting the entire process, filming the sessions and noting the progress. It was unprecedented in his career, and he felt it could contribute to future studies on animal-assisted therapy. "Melissa, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, doctor." "Has Ethan always had this connection with animals?" "Since he was a baby. When he was very young and cried a lot because of his syndrome, our dog was the only one who could calm him down. Later, as he grew, any animal he met seemed to understand he was special." "And at your farm? How was it with the horses?" "Ethan was inseparable from Thunder. My husband said he'd never seen anything like it. The horse protected the boy as if he were his own foal." "And when you lost the farm?" Melissa tensed. "How do you know we lost the farm?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. I just assumed—" "Michael got sick. The treatments were very expensive. We had to sell everything." "Including Thunder?" "Michael said he had run away. Only now did I learn the truth." Dr. Wilson was intrigued by the story. Something didn't add up about Richard's version of how the horse was purchased. "Melissa, would you mind if I looked into Thunder's background a bit? For scientific purposes, of course." "I don't see a problem." "But why?" "Because I want to fully understand the story before publishing any study on the case." That week, the routine at Green Valley Stables changed completely. Ethan arrived every morning for his session with Thunder, and the animal's transformation was visible to everyone. Staff who once avoided the paddock now stopped to watch the boys work. "Mrs. Johnson," said Walter, the longest-serving caretaker at the stables, "I've worked here 20 years and never seen anything like it. Ethan has always been special with animals. It's more than that. That horse was, I don't know, depressed. Ever since he got here. Now he seems like a different animal." "Depressed?" "Yeah. My wife says animals grieve too, and that horse seemed to be missing something." Walter's words echoed in Melissa's mind. Could Thunder really miss his old life? Miss the farm where he was born, the people who raised him? Miss Ethan? Frank, meanwhile, was going through a deep professional crisis. His entire identity was based on his ability to tame horses, and a 6-year-old boy had achieved in days what he hadn't in months. "Robert, I'm thinking of quitting." "Why?" "Because I'm no longer good at this. If a child can do it better than me—" "Frank, you're looking at this the wrong way." "How so?" "Ethan isn't competing with you. He's teaching a new way to work with animals." "Teaching a special child?" "Exactly. Maybe we adults have overcomplicated something that should be simple." "What do you mean?" "Ethan doesn't try to dominate the horse. He just connects with it. He offers companionship, affection, understanding. There's no power struggle, no attempt to control." Frank grew thoughtful. Maybe Robert was right. Maybe his entire approach had been wrong from the start. "Do you think I can learn from him?" "I'm sure you can." The next day, Frank asked to observe Ethan's session more closely. He watched every move the boy made. Every word he said to the horse, every gesture of affection. "Ethan," he said when the session ended, "can I ask you something?" "Sure. How do you know what Thunder is feeling?" Ethan thought for a moment, with a seriousness that sometimes surprised adults. "He tells me." "Tells you how?" "Just like you're telling me now, only without words." "Without words? Yeah." "He speaks here," Ethan said, touching his own heart. "And I listen here." He touched his ear. "Don't you hear what the horses say?" Frank felt a lump in his throat. When had he stopped listening? When had he become just a professional trying to control animals instead of someone trying to understand them? "No, Ethan. It's been a long time since I listened." "Want me to teach you?" The simple, sincere question from a 6-year-old boy with Down syndrome broke something inside Frank that had been hardened for decades. "Yes," he said, his voice choked. "I'd really like to learn." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. A horse buyer from Los Angeles showed up at the stables without warning. It was James Henderson, known for purchasing animals for high-level competitions. "Richard, I heard you have a special horse here." "Special how?" "A chestnut with orange markings, purebred. They say no one's been able to tame it." Richard tensed up. How had James heard about the horse? "Where did you hear that?" "It's a small market, my friend. Word gets around. The horse isn't for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. Can I see it?" Richard couldn't refuse without raising suspicions. He led James to the paddock where Thunder was grazing peacefully. "This is the aggressive animal?" James asked, surprised. "Seems very calm." "Depends on the day." "Can I get closer?" Before Richard could answer, Ethan came running up, just back from school. The boy went straight to the paddock as he did every day. "Hi, Thunder, how are you?" The horse whinnied softly and moved closer to the fence for its usual affection. "Amazing," James murmured. "What training method did you use?" "It wasn't conventional training," Richard said, uneasy. "How so?" "The boy has a special bond with the animal." James watched Ethan interacting with Thunder, clearly impressed. "Richard, this horse is worth a fortune if it's truly tamed. I'll offer $200,000 for it." The number made Richard stagger. It was 4 times what he'd paid. But accepting the offer would mean separating Ethan from the horse, and after weeks of watching the pair, he knew that would be cruel. "I need to think about it." "Don't take too long. I have other deals to close." When James left, Richard was alone with his thoughts. $200,000 would solve many of the stable's financial problems, but it would also destroy the only pure and beautiful thing I'd witnessed in years. Amanda found her father in the office that night, clearly upset. "Dad, what happened?" "Walter said a buyer showed up here." James Henderson offered $200,000 for the horse. "Wow, that's a lot of money." "It is, but you don't seem excited." "I'm not." "Why?" Richard sighed deeply. "Because selling that horse would be the most cowardly thing I've ever done in my life." "I don't understand." "Amanda, that boy loves that animal, and the animal loves him. How can I destroy that for money?" "Dad, since when do you care about anything beyond money?" The question cut deep. Richard looked at his daughter, seeing his own reflection in her. Cold, calculating, focused only on results. "Since I started watching Ethan, that boy reminded me of things I'd forgotten." "What things?" "When you were little and played with the horses, when your mother was still alive, and this place was a home, not just a business." Amanda was surprised. Her father rarely spoke about the past, especially about the mother she'd lost so young. "Dad." "Amanda, I need to tell you something. Then you'll understand why I can't sell that horse." "What?" "I knew the man who sold me the horse. I knew he was desperate, that he needed the money for medical treatment, and I took advantage of that." "What do you mean?" "I offered $50,000 for an animal worth over $100. He accepted because he had no choice." "Dad!" "And that's not all. When I found out his widow was looking for work, I hired her to make sure she'd never learn the truth." Amanda was horrified by the revelations. "You manipulated an entire family." "I did, and now I'm paying the price." "What price?" The price of seeing that boy love an animal that should have been with him all along. The price of building my fortune on other people's suffering. Amanda had never seen her father so vulnerable. The image of the tough, successful businessman was crumbling before her eyes. What are you going to do? I don't know, but I know I can't sell that horse. That night, Melissa found Ethan crying in his room. What's wrong, sweetheart? Thunder is sad. How do you know? He told me he's leaving. Melissa's stomach turned to ice. Had Ethan overheard something about the purchase offer? Who said he's leaving? No one said it. He told me. He said a man came to look at him today. Ethan, Thunder isn't leaving. Yes, he is, just like before. Before, when Daddy got sick, Thunder told me he had to leave to help Daddy, and he did. Melissa was speechless. Ethan remembered the time they'd lost the horse, even if only vaguely. Honey, this time is different. How do you know? Because I won't let anyone take Thunder from you again. But even as she said it, Melissa knew she had no power to stop anything. She was just an employee dependent on her boss's goodwill. The next day, Robert sought out Richard with a discovery that would change everything. Richard, I need to talk to you about the horse. What now? I looked into its background, like I mentioned, and I found something interesting. What? The horse was registered under Michael Santos's name in 2018, but there's a note in the records that could be important. What note? The animal was registered as inalienable family property for therapeutic purposes. That means the sale could be legally challenged if it was done without following proper procedures. Richard paled. What does that mean? It means if the family contests the sale, claiming it was made under extreme necessity, and for a pittance you could be forced to return the horse. Even though I bought it legally, the sales document is flawless. But if they prove there was a defect in consent, taking advantage of the seller's state of necessity, the transaction could be voided. Richard sat heavily in his chair. His entire strategy to control the situation was crumbling. Robert, have you told anyone about this? Not yet. But I thought you should know. What do you think I should do? Honestly, I think you should talk to Melissa and find a fair solution before she finds out through other means. But before Richard could make any decision, James Henderson returned to the stables with an even more tempting offer. Richard, I've reconsidered my offer. I'll give you $300,000 for the horse plus a partnership to develop an animal therapy program. You keep 40% of the profits. It was an irresistible financial proposal, but Richard knew accepting it would destroy not only Ethan but also his own soul. James, I need more time to decide. I don't have any more time. It's now or never. Then it's never. James was surprised by the refusal. Richard, you're making a mistake. This horse could make you rich. I'm already rich, and now I'm learning there are things more important than money. After James left, Richard made the hardest decision of his life. He called Melissa, Amanda, and Robert to a meeting in his office. Melissa, I need to tell you a truth I should have shared long ago. What truth? I knew your husband. He was the one I bought the horse from. Melissa turned pale. You? I knew who you were when I hired you. And I knew Ethan was the boy who used to play with the horse at your ranch. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you'd question the sale, and because I took advantage of your husband's desperation to buy the animal for far less than its real value. How much was the horse worth? Over 100,000, I paid 50. Melissa's legs weakened. All the humiliation she'd endured, all the struggle to rebuild her life, and now she discovered she'd been deceived from the start. Melissa, Richard continued, I want to make things right. How? By giving the horse back to you. I can't pay the 50,000 you spent. I don't want money. I want to do the right thing. Amanda watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Finally, she was seeing the honorable man her father had once been. But there's one condition, Richard added. What? I want you to stay here. Ethan can keep working with the horse, and you can help develop a therapy program for other special children. I don't understand. Melissa, your son has a special gift, and this stable can become a place where other children like him can find help too. Are you offering a partnership? I'm offering a family. That afternoon, Ethan ran to the paddock as he did every day, unaware his life had changed forever. Thunder was waiting for him as always. "Hi, Thunder. Guess what? Mommy said you're staying with me forever." The horse whinnied softly as if understanding every word. "And you know what? Now other kids can play here too. You'll have lots of friends." Frank watched from a distance, still learning to listen to the horses as Ethan had taught him. Robert documented everything, already planning the scientific study that would change how animal-assisted therapy was viewed in the United States. Amanda stood beside her father, both moved by the scene. "Dad, I think for the first time in your life, you did the right thing." "No, Amanda, for the first time I let someone teach me what's right." "Ethan? Ethan, that boy taught me love has no limitations, and that sometimes those who seem the most fragile are the ones with the greatest strength to change the world." Months later, Green Valley Stables became the first equine therapy center specialized in children with special needs in the region. Ethan was the official ambassador of the program, helping other boys and girls discover the magic of connecting with horses. Melissa had become the educational coordinator of the project, using her experience as a mother of a special needs child to help other families. Frank had revolutionized his training methods, incorporating the emotional listening techniques he learned from Ethan. Robert published a groundbreaking study on the ability of children with Down syndrome to form deep connections with traumatized animals, opening new fields of research in the area. And Richard, he discovered that his greatest wealth wasn't in the stable's profits, but in the joy he saw on the face of every child who overcame their limitations through the unconditional love of horses. One Sunday afternoon, as he watched Ethan teach an autistic girl to ride Thunder, Richard remembered the words the boy had said on the first day. "He's not cursed, he's scared." He realized then that Ethan wasn't just talking about the horse, he was talking about all of them. Adults wounded by life, hardened by loss, who had forgotten how to love without conditions. A special needs child had managed to heal not just a traumatized horse, but an entire family broken by pain and greed. The sun was setting on the horizon when Ethan finished the day's session. He gave Thunder a little kiss on the muzzle and ran into his mother's arms. "Mommy, Thunder says he's happy because now he has a big family again." "And you, sweetheart? Are you happy?" "I am. Because here, everyone learns to listen with their heart." Melissa looked around, seeing Richard playing with the children, Amanda organizing the next day's activities, Frank patiently talking to parents about their children's progress, and Robert jotting down every small victory in his notebook. They had all been transformed by the pure love of a child who saw no limitations, only possibilities. And at the center of it all, a chestnut horse with orange markings grazed peacefully, finally at peace with himself and the world around him. The end. Now, tell us what you thought of this touching story. Do you believe unconditional love can truly transform lives, as it did for Ethan and Thunder? Share your honest thoughts in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving stories. Thank you so much for joining us.